Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Alex.
As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We are also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On today's episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are going to cover the recent league news. It's a little bit smaller post free agency, but we will cover everything that came up. And we are going to break down my top 2024 rookie running back rankings. So we'll do top 10 real briefly. This is for the prospects. It's not quite dynasty yet. So, Jeff, we have some housekeeping news to talk about, and then we got some big ticket things to talk about with the league news. Why don't you start us off with the Broncos?
So the Broncos signed former Lions wide receiver Josh Reynolds to a 2-year deal. Is he the equivalent of Jerry Jeudy? Is he better than Jerry Jeudy? I don't really know. I feel like he is Jerry Jeudy in a nutshell, kind of replacing one mediocre wide receiver with another. But it's kind of interesting to see Josh Reynolds leave his buddy Jared Goff behind finally. Like, he's played his whole career with Jared Goff, it feels like, and now he leaves him behind for the Broncos, which we don't even know what the Broncos are going to do at quarterback this season. So he doesn't even know who's going to be throwing him the ball yet.
Yeah, I think it's a cheaper replacement for Jeudy. They weren't getting much out of Judy's production-wise. Jeudy might be better off with Cleveland. We'll see how well he does with Cleveland, but this to me signals that the Lions might be going wide receiver in the draft. It is a very heavy, talented wide receiver group, and we'll definitely talk about that in a couple weeks. But I think it's a solid replacement. It's not a big ticket. I think Sean Payton just trying to flush out an offense and then upgrade from there. So he just kind of fills a void a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if he sees him as like a Michael Thomas type or what they exactly see Josh Reynolds as, but I do think of Josh Reynolds as a more over the middle wide receiver than outside vertical wide receiver. And maybe that's just because I've been watching him for a few years, but yeah, so it seems like they're looking for that type of wide receiver. That's Sean Payton's type. Anything else on Josh Reynolds? I know he's one of your favorites.
Definitely not one of my favorites, but we can move on to one of your favorites. The Miami Dolphins have extended Raheem Mostert through 2025. So they basically turned in his last year into a 2-year deal, which is very important because, as we've seen, a lot of running backs have injury issues. And one of the critiques that I had for Achane was that he could be injury prone due to his build. So having someone like Mostert there is going to make sure that the running game runs smoothly and effectively. And both of them will probably be used when they're both healthy anyway. So, Jeff, how do you like this deal?
So I like it because it kicks some of the money down the path a little bit for the Dolphins, so it opens up a little bit of cap space for this year, as well as keeps the number 2 2023 fantasy running back under contract, which gives them a nice little safety blanket. This is actually a really good offense to run in as well. The fact that you have 2 speed demons in Hill and Waddle shows that they're not able to stack the box as much, so it gives a lot more holes and openings for the running back to run through, and Mostert really took advantage of that last year, took advantage of Achane's injuries, and I expect him to do the same this year. He might take a back seat to Achane, but I could see them both being top 24 running backs when this is all said and done.
All right, I can see a pathway for that as well. In other Dolphins news, I know that they've been pretty public about having an open offer out on the table for Odell Beckham Jr. So recently, Tyreek Hill posted a picture of him and OBJ on the socials. So do you think that signals an imminent signing coming soon?
So I do think that is a good fit. I just see OBJ kind of hurting the value of Jonnu Smith, who's one of your guys. I just feel like they would use him more in the tight end wide receiver role, and it wouldn't really take away from Tyreek and Waddle too much. But OBJ is getting up there in age as well, so I don't really know how much he has left in the tank. But if he could put together 1 or 2 good games, that's all they really need from him this year.
I think it'd be an interesting fit. It's definitely a fit for OBJ himself to go to a place like Miami where he can party. And I think that he would just be insurance for Tyreek Hill's health and for Waddle's health, someone else to have out there and keep the offense going. Um, he'll probably, I would say, a cheaper deal to go to Miami. I don't think anyone is clamoring to give him a big contract, so might be a good fit, and I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be tax free, but where does OBJ's girlfriend want him to go? I don't think he'll be too big of a partier. Where does Kim Kardashian want Odell Beckham to go? So I guess that is a factor in here that we haven't really thought about too much. But yeah, so we'll see if this happens soon, if this comes to fruition. It's a really good city, tax-free city for OBJ. So I do expect something to be coming really shortly. And it would also behoove OBJ to sign before this wide receiver class gets drafted. So you could see a bunch of veteran wide receivers over the next 2 to 3 weeks take a little bit cheaper deals than they normally would because they know that this influx of wide receiver talent's coming and they may not get that offer after the draft. So you could see that coming.
All right, we can move on to more wide receiver news. So the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice got into a little bit of trouble earlier this week. So what we know right now is that he was in fact driving in a racing accident on the highway. So his vehicle, his Lambo that he rented or leased, that was racing an SUV on the highway and caused multiple car accident. We know at least one person was injured. They went to the hospital. We don't know of any fatalities. We don't know how badly injured that one person was. Rashee and his friends fled the scene, which caused quite a bit of a stir. But he and his lawyer have posted updates saying that he submitted himself to police. He's cooperating, not to judge him on one bad incident, and that he hopes to make amends with anyone involved. So, Jeff, do you think legal action is coming? Do you think it impacts his playing this year? Do you think he gets any kind of suspension? What do you think?
I do think a suspension is possible. I could see up to like 1 game, maybe 2 games, but I don't think that's coming in 2024. We've seen the NFL wait for a court case to be resolved before they handle a suspension. We can look at what happened with Elvin Kamara last year. So I think they will wait, and I think it will be on the lower end because there was no death in this particular incident. But I do also think that Rashee Rice has learned from his experience. I don't know how you don't learn from an experience like this, and I could see him being a lot more responsible in his life going forward after this.
Okay, well, another person who's moving on with his life is quarterback Carson Wentz. Last year was with the Rams. Now he has signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. Jeff, he's one of your favorite players, and this is a spot that you thought would be a good place for him to go. How do you feel about this signing?
I've always said that Carson Wentz should be Patrick Mahomes' backup for a year or two, and this could be something that revives his career, especially playing with Andy Reid. I don't believe Patrick Mahomes has missed too many games in his career, maybe a game here or a game there, but at some point, an injury is going to hit. It hits every single quarterback at some point. Tom Brady with an ACL. There was Matt Stafford with a shoulder injury. Like it does happen quite frequently. So they're just hedging their bets and they're going to be safe. And I think they could play a similar style offense with Carson Wentz that they do Patrick Mahomes. Am I saying Carson Wentz is as talented as Patrick Mahomes? No. But the whole point of your backup quarterback is so you don't need to change an entire system if your quarterback goes down. And I feel like they have similar skill sets, although Patrick Mahomes is a lot more superstar-ish. So thoughts on that?
I think there is one thing we can all agree, and Carson Wentz is a better quarterback than Blaine Gabbert. So he's immediately an upgrade at the backup spot for the Chiefs. If they do end up playing him at all, which they might if they sit players out, if they're doing well in the season so that they can rest them, he has a chance to show off his skill and maybe get a journeyman starting spot somewhere else next year. But either way, he has a chance to win a ring with the Chiefs even as a backup.
Absolutely. And as I said, Andy Reid's a perfect person to revive his career. And as he's one of the few backup quarterbacks in the NFL, whereas if your starter goes down, you don't need to dial back the offense so much where you cannot move the football or you're running the ball all of the time. He's a guy that can throw it. So it's not a bad bet here for the Chiefs, especially as they try to build depth and go for a three-peat. All right, Alex, you ready
Okay,
for the big news of the week? This is for
let's do
you.
it.
So the Bills trade Stephon Diggs and a fifth round and sixth round pick to the Houston Texans for a 2025 second round pick. How are you feeling about this trade? What does this mean for both teams going forward?
Ah, I've gone through a range of emotions and different thoughts on this. So Stephon Diggs, everyone knows he's a bit of a diva. He has now forced his way off two teams to date. He's been very productive, and now he comes to Houston, which there's a lot of debate. Will he be the number one? Will he be the number two? I think he's gonna end up being the number two because I think Nico Collins is an ascending player. He already has a connection with CJ Stroud. And I think that it's pretty, in some ways, it's pretty ingenious the way that the Texans traded down in this draft and got Minnesota's second this year and their second next year. And then they flipped the second next year for Diggs plus a couple late round picks. Um, they had Diggs on a favorable contract that was like 18 million per year, and this was the only year they had guaranteed money. They shortened it to 1 year, gave him uh, some guaranteed money up front to make his numbers better this year and making him a free agent next year. So my thought went from wow, we have him for basically no guarantees for 3 more years to okay, well we have him on 1 year deal. We sweeten. I think to me this signals that Tank Dell's not 100% back and they can't rely on him in two wide receiver sets. So they need someone for this year. I think that they want to extend Nico Collins next year, so they need to have that money off the books. So this makes a lot of sense in a short-term rental. And if Diggs does well and he likes Houston, we can obviously work on an extension for him here. To me, I think he's going to be here for a season and then probably play in Dallas with his brother next year is my guess. And the Cowboys should have more cap space next off season. So to me, that's where I see it. And I think Nico, obviously you can downgrade his production fantasy wise a little bit, but I think he still is a high end wide receiver two for fantasy. He's the one for Houston. I think Diggs is a high end two as well. And to me, Tank Dell falls into the wide receiver three, wide receiver four, but high upside due to his explosiveness. So Jeff, I don't know if that sounds about right to you, but how do you feel with Diggs leaving Buffalo and where that leaves them?
So with Buffalo, they are in an interesting spot right now because they brought in Mac Hollins, Curtis Samuel, KJ Hamler. So they have young weapons there, but nothing really proven. Curtis Samuel is an interesting weapon, and then they have Khalil Shakir returning. I've always thrown out there that they're probably going to draft a rookie wide receiver. I think they're going to do that before this, and I think they're still going to do it after this. So there is that. And then I was wondering because it seems like the Steelers and Tyler Boyd have like broken off talks. So it seems like Tyler Boyd is still looking for a home, and he would be an interesting possession receiver for a year or two in Buffalo to kind of complement Samuel, Shakir, and then the rookie wide receiver that would come in. And then Mac Hollins is a weapon that we're not talking about. He 1 to 2 times a game, you could just bomb it down the field and at the very least, open up the defense. At the very worst, or at the very best, score a touchdown. So there's that as well that we're not talking about. Allen has the arm to hit him in stride, so it'll be interesting to see which wide receivers that he builds chemistry with. But we saw with Patrick Mahomes last year, all you really need is one really great weapon, and we do believe that Dalton Kincaid will take a step forward this year and potentially be that really great weapon for Josh Allen moving forward. So we'll see kind of what happens there. I like this for the Texans as well because now they have 3 great wide receivers. I do think Tank Dell will be back, and I do think he'll be back full strength, but I don't think they want to use him like they used him last year, especially because he got hurt on a play where he was blocking at the goal line. I was absolutely furious then. I'm still furious about it now. So this gives them a blocking wide receiver, and it gives them more flexibility to kind of move forward and kind of figure out what's going to happen there. Also, they get to look at Stephon Diggs. They might have to tag him after this year. Who knows? I mean, if he plays well enough and builds enough chemistry, then it kind of does put Houston in a little bit of a spot, but we'll see kind of what that spot means moving forward.
Yeah, they can always tag him and try to get something of value for him. So we'll see how that goes. I do think it's funny that the Bills were able to get a pick back from Minnesota from that initial trade, basically, because the Bills got him from Minnesota, and then they got Minnesota's pick next year. So I just thought that was nice parody. But we can move on now, Jeff. We can move on to the final item of this episode, and that is the current top 10 rookie running back ranks. And as we approach dynasty season, as we approach rookie draft season for fantasy, this could change based on where they go and what if they're likely to start over the guys that are there. But we can just start here. We're going to start from the bottom, work our way up. So we'll start at my current number 10, and that is Ray Davis out of Kentucky. He rushed for 1,000-yard plus seasons in each of his last two college seasons. He comes from Vanderbilt in 2022 to Kentucky in 2023. He's smooth, he's powerful, he has good vision, and he jump cuts well. I think that he is a compact player. He's tough, and he routinely falls forward on contact. And he does showcase pass catching ability, which could help him earn a larger role on Sundays. I do think he lacks top end speed. So I could see him as a rotation player early on and then developing into potentially a one in a committee. My next guy here is Will Shipley out of Clemson. He's a guy that's kind of moved up and down my board a little bit as I try to figure him out. He is a versatile player. He's got the ability to contribute in the next level as a runner, as a pass catcher, and as a returner. So he'll be able to work his way into rosters early. He's got very good vision. He's makes sharp cuts and gets to his top speed quickly. I know it's not top end level quickly, but it's pretty close. He's also a very shifty route runner. He creates separation out of his breaks. And I think that he could be a solid number two right out the gate and work on, as a third down back. I kind of envision him similar to a Tony Pollard type. I know they're not 100% the same, but I could see him doing that early. And my next guy here is a little bit similar to him, and that's Bucky Irving out of Oregon. He's a little bit smaller than him, didn't test the 40 times that well. I don't think he has elite speed, but he is also compact. He is also fast and shifty. He can get open in the field. He, surprisingly, for his size, been a little under 5'9" and 192 pounds. He has the ability to shake off tackles pretty well, and I think the Washington game showcases that, where he broke like 7 tackles on one rush up the middle, which is incredible for someone that size. And he only had just 1 fumble and 475 career carries. He's very good as a pass catcher, but I think he lacks pass protection. And like I said, he doesn't have the true home run speed. I kind of think of him as like a Gio Bernard for his time with Cincinnati. And I think he could be a solid player. I think some people overrate his ability and will draft him too high in rookie drafts, but he can be a solid guy. My next guy here is kind of the polar opposite of that, and that is Audric Estime out of Notre Dame. He's a bigger back. He's 221 pounds. He's 5'11". He ran a pretty poor 4.71 40 time at the combine, improved it to 4.6 at his pro day. So a little bit faster. He plays a little bit faster than that, but he is a sledgehammer. He will run straight up the middle, and he will knock defenders on their butts. He is kind of a ground and pound rusher. I think that he excels with that power at the goal line. And that's obviously evidenced by his 29 rushing touchdowns over his last 2 seasons. So he's someone that I like as a first and second down thumper and goal line thumper. He doesn't really bring much to the passing game, so I think that will lower his draft stock on draft day. The next guy here is also a power back. It's Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin. He's 6'1", 235 pounds, and he is someone who's probably one of the bigger running backs in this class. He's a downhill runner, and he's got great footwork and vision. Plus, he's very tough to tackle in the open field. He had 3 seasons with the Badgers, and Allen posted the second most rushing touchdowns and yards in the Power 5 conferences. He does lack top speed. He is a little raw in the passing game, but he can still catch. I know there's a lot of people out there comparing him to Brandon Jacobs, which I think is a little bit fair. He does sometimes, not all the time, sometimes remind me of Derrick Henry, the way that he runs and still has a loose ability to catch. So I like him a little bit in this draft class. It's going to be very much where he goes. That's very dependent. But now we got my top 5 here, and coming in at 5 is Blake Corum out of Michigan. He's on the shorter side. He's a little under 5'8". He's 205 pounds. He ran a respectable 4.5340. He is someone that the Michigan offense ran through, literally. He kept the chains moving, kept pounding. He's a strong runner. I think that he can do well in short yardage. I think that he can also do well in a zone run scheme as well as a gap scheme. He also had a large number of tackles, 27, a large number of touchdowns, 27 touchdowns, school record in 2023. And his last 45 rushing touchdowns at Michigan, only 12 went from more than 5 yards. So he's not someone that's going to get yards after yards after contact. He's not that kind of back. He's very much going to take what he's going to get and going to keep pounding. I think teams like the Chargers with Harbaugh and also teams like Baltimore with the other Harbaugh brother would like him a lot, and anyone running a power system would probably take him, or someone needing a goal line back. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Doug Martin from fantasy years of yesteryear, basically. I don't think that he should be a first-round pick in rookie drafts, and I think he should probably be a third-round pick in the NFL draft. Some teams may like him more for the reasons I laid out here, but doesn't excite me that much in fantasy. But he is going to be someone's lead back at some point, which is why he's this high. All right. So coming in at number 4 for me, Marshawn Lloyd out of USC. I think he was underutilized at USC. They had a bad run blocking offensive line, but he made the most of it. He has plenty of tread on his tires. He never surpassed more than 120 carries in a season. So it will be interesting to see if he can carry the load in the NFL level. I think he can. I think that's partially due, though, because he did have some minor injuries going through college, but he showcased really good speed with a 4.4640 at the combine. I think he's one of the best big play potential runners in this game. He's very smooth. He kind of reminded me of one of your former Panther running backs, DeAngelo Williams. So I think that he's someone that could do well for you if you draft him in your rookie drafts. Number 3 for me is Jalen Wright out of Tennessee. He's 5'10", 210 pounds, and he ran a 4.3540 at the combine. I know he models his game after former Tennessee alum Alvin Kamara. He's not the same back as him at all, but he is explosive. He's got faster breakaway speed than Kamara did. He is a little bit more raw at the passing downs, and I think he's someone that can improve there. He logged a run of at least 10 yards or more on more than 25% of his carries in 2023. So he really does showcase that big playability. And I think that he does have a chance to be a real NFL starter day one, depending on the team that he goes to. I compare him to a more athletic version of Lamar Miller. And I just think he runs very smooth. Okay, we're down to the top 2 here, and I think you can flip-flop these guys if you want. They're going to be the top 2 on most people's boards here at the running back position. So for me, coming in at number 2 is Jonathan Brooks out of Texas. Brooks was one of the better running backs in this class. He backed up Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson the year before. So this past year, he did very well, but he's recovering from an ACL tear that he suffered in November. It could take him as much as the full season to get back into the rhythm of things, get back 100%. So he's not someone that I would count on this year to contribute right away. But I think that when he is healthy, he will provide an NFL team with explosive dual threat ability. He has good contact balance, and he is a ball carrier that is tough to tackle in the open field. I think that, to me, he kind of reminds me of Joe Mixon a little bit for different reasons. He doesn't come with the off the field issues, but he did miss some combine numbers, and I do think his game is similar to a young Joe Mixon. I think he probably would be a little bit faster, but we don't know that for sure at this point. And I think it's likely he goes to the Cowboys, considering the Cowboys team doctor is the one who did his ACL surgery, and they're doing a lot of homework on him, and they have an opening. So he's someone that could have really high upside in fantasy. All right. Number 1 for me is Trey Benson out of Florida State. He's 6'1", 216 pounds, and ran a 4.39 40. He's a two-time second-team All-ACC selection at running back. He has the potential to be a three-down back in this league. He runs the gap scheme very well. He has good patience and vision, and he possesses great speed. He posted the third fastest 40-yard dash time among running backs at the NFL Combine, and as a receiver, he does very well when having to adjust to the ball, and he's very good in pass protection. He's a nice player with ideal body type, and he can carve out a solid career in the right system. To me, he's the most all-around back in this class. It's it's not super close with everyone below him and Jonathan Brooks. I think that it's hard to find someone to compare to, and I know a lot of people don't like comps. To me, the closest that I could come up with is Jonathan Taylor light. I think he has a lot of the same qualities that Jonathan Taylor has. I think he might be better in the passing game than Jonathan Taylor, but I think Jonathan Taylor is a better downfield runner at this stage. But very, very close, and he's someone that will probably go in the first round of rookie drafts, probably high second in the NFL draft. So, Jeff, how did I do here? Do you like any of these guys? Do you differ on any of these guys?
So I'm not like in love with anybody yet when it comes to running backs, and I think landing spot will change my opinion on a few of these guys. Um, like if the Texans grabbed a running back, so we know Joe Mixon's getting up there in age. So Mixon could be like a 1 or 2 year starter, and then you turn it over to the rookie. So I look at it from a couple of different ways. From the redraft perspective, none of these guys excite me at all. From the dynasty perspective, I kind of have to look a few years into my crystal ball and see if I can't figure out who could get some playing time, who has potential. Also want to pay attention to reports, because if we remember a few years ago, Trey Sermon was drafted early. Elijah Mitchell was drafted later. There was reports very early in camp that they liked Elijah Mitchell more. So there is that little bit as well to pay attention to some reports that are coming out and actually pay attention to them. So, and then some of them are smoke screens, and we just don't really know. But yeah, I could see a bunch of teams being in the market here for a potential running back for now and a potential running back for later. Cowboys is a spot that I'm looking at. If they draft a running back, I would be very interested this year and going forward in that spot. There's a few other teams that could use a running back as well.
Do you think the Panthers are going to draft a running back this year?
It's possible. That would be one of the places I would be interested. The Giants is another place I would be interested. I know they brought in Singletary, but obviously that's all that's there right now. And those are kind of some of my big spots where I would be really interested. The Vikings is another place because they have Aaron Jones on a 1-year deal. So it's just paying attention to kind of what deals are around right now and who could have potential starting jobs going forward.
Do we think it's a lock that Blake Corum is going to the Chargers at this point, or do you think there's a chance he goes somewhere else?
It's possible. I guess it really depends on how the draft falls. And I just don't think there's going to be any running backs at least through 2-ish rounds. Maybe at the very end of the second we start taking running back. So it really depends on when the Chargers pick comes up and if anyone else falls in love with him between now and then. So we will see. But again, you keep passing on the guy a few times, and you kind of deserve to lose him too. So that's why I always say don't trade down if you got a guy on the board. You take that guy. Like, you give him the confidence that you wanted him, not trade down and be like, oh, we got our guy anyways.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, you can view it two different ways. You can build up more assets and be a better team, but I think confidence is earned. So I think when you do take a guy, you make him earn that confidence. Either way. But that does it for this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all for listening and downloading this episode. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy, and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Bye, everybody.